Today we're talking to Michaela Wessels, CEO and co-founder of Style Arcade. Welcome, Michaela.
Thanks, Beverly. Nice to be here.
So, Michaela, you hail from South Africa and you come from the land of the great merchandise planner. Can I just talk a little bit about your early career and really what interested you in getting into retail and merchandise planning in particular?
Yeah, sure. The land of great planners. It really is. And I think the UK as well was what I found over my career. But yeah, I started at Truworths. Really, that was where I did my training, which is I think 1,000 store network sort of department store in South Africa. And yeah, I've spent 15 years in planning now, but thinking back to the Truworths days, it was watching a business just operate a bit like a Swiss clock. In South Africa, we had built all our own systems and everything just operated so seamlessly. And what I loved about planning was really probably the combination of the design and fashion element with that amazing sort of mathematical, science-backed, data-backed and an analysis or, planning. It was an incredible combination for me.
Obviously, you started your career in South Africa. How then did you transition to come into Australia, and how did you find the difference in planning in Australia to South Africa?
Yeah, when I moved to Australia, which would have been, this was 13 years ago, I feel like when I arrived here in 2009, I felt a little bit like the industry was maybe 10 to 15 years behind. And not because, for lack of trying. I think there was fantastic retailers here, unbelievable retailers, but merch planning wasn't as well known, I guess, back then. And so coming in from South Africa, the planners that I would meet here that were in the senior positions were mostly from South Africa or the UK. So yeah, spent a few years, working across different retailers, and everything was a lot different for me because I'd come from a system orientated planning background to a very manual, you are the system. Hello, merchandise planner, you are the system for us. So that was eye-opening for me.
What I see is in merchandise planning here is it's very much Excel spreadsheet based.
Yeah, it is. You build your world in Excel spreadsheets, and then you link your world up in those Excel spreadsheets. And all of the buyers and planners contribute together in the Excel world. But yeah, it's tiring. I think, after spending a few years in that, you go, wow, I'm just exhausted. And I think that was where a few of my colleagues got to at a point, was just operating in such a manual world it was tiring, to say the least.
It can be quite disjointed as well because, everybody's got their version of the spreadsheet. And that's one of the difficulties, isn't it? If everybody's got their own version and they've just done some work on it, but there's actually no, what's the one viewpoint? What's the one true viewpoint that?
And I feel like there sometimes is a bit of conflict between buyers and planners as to what the truth is, because we're all on a different spreadsheet or a different formula. And, you say there's one truth of the world, one truth for the team. I remember a mistake or just picking up something in one of the Excel spreadsheets. I think it was almost a $600,000 error just from formula, and it's terrifying what can happen to businesses when you operate in Excel only.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, you had a great career. I mean, you really sort of left the retail side of merchandise planning as director of planning for the Iconic.
Yeah.
So, where did the idea come from for Style Arcade?
Interesting, Beverly. The manual world of merch planning kind of got to me in the end. I guess I had a tipping point where I walked into a review meeting on a Monday, and we all had a ream of paper printed for each of us, and there were 10 of us in the meeting, and this ream of paper was product performance by store. And we would just trawl through that for 4 hours. And I was like, oh, goodness, there must be a way to automate this.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I got to, like, something needs to be done about this. So yeah, I approached a friend in technology, Brent, and I said to him, Brent, this problem has to go away. I can't do my job like this. It's too manual. So he said, I'm sure we can solve it with technology. Anything's possible with tech.
Absolutely.
I said, well, let's see. So yeah, that was evenings and weekends. Brent and I just chipped away at the idea and building Style Arcade, and eventually, I guess, we launched it to the Iconic when I joined them. So obviously as director of planning, and then I said, well, Style Arcade is kind of my baby that I've been working on. Here it is, and we had a trial with the Iconic, and they've been a customer for what, 5-6 years now. So that's where it all began.
Wow, and continue to grow and go from strength to strength as well.
Yeah, totally. And I think the other great thing about the Iconic, just being there made me realize how different planning is from bricks and mortar to the online space. It's almost like there are two different minds that the planner has to adopt across those two, channels. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Lots of learnings.
What would you say, if you could articulate somebody who didn't really understand what you meant? What do you mean by it's different? What is different? What are the different considerations, do you think?
I think bricks and mortar, there's almost a recipe for how you plan a store, what stock you send to each store, how you grade the stores, etc. In the online space, it moves so fast and it's so big that you can almost free your mind a little bit more from the rules and start to really explore the growth opportunities in online, because there are so many. The other interesting thing was that when you're in bricks and mortar, you can always, you go into a store, you can't find your size, you hop on online, you find your size, you order it, and you get it fulfilled. In online only or pure play, you can't afford to be out of a size because you've just lost a customer. So that size availability became a huge thing for online and conversion and growth, of course.
And you're absolutely right that there's there's nowhere else for the customer to go. Whereas even if you're in the old days before online, you go into a store, they don't have your size, they'd ring up another store and find it for you.
Exactly.
We've got one somewhere, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference. So can you explain, Michaela, how does Style Arcade work? What does it do? And what does it give to buyers and planners?
I guess in terms of Style Arcade, the biggest value for them is answering that main question that all of the fashion brands have. It's like, how much to buy? It's the big question on all of our minds. So that's our key goal, is to help you understand how much to buy. We also recommend the ideal accurate size curves for you. Interestingly, it sounds like it's a bit of a boring topic, but it's a passion of mine, because before I built Style Arcade, I was convinced that there was potentially about 20% of profit loss in any brand just from sizing.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, because you can't calculate this in Excel spreadsheets. So once it was in a system, and when we validated across all of our customer base, it really is 20%, Beverly. I think sometimes up to 35% we've seen in one brand. The improvements that you can get from just improving your size curve accuracy is immense. So yeah.
And that is quite incredible. And particularly if I'm thinking of products like footwear or bras, that my head just sort of explodes when I think about trying to keep the sizes in. When you look at something like bras, whether you're an 8, 10, 12, whatever, and then you've got different cup sizes and everything else, it's just it just explodes, doesn't it, in terms of the amount of units that you have to buy
and the data that you have to crunch. I mean, I think about we used to analyze size curves in planning. Of course, it was part of what we did, but we couldn't analyze size curves by store, by category, by product, any day of the week in seconds. And I think that's where you get to having a level of accuracy that's just immeasurable. So you're right, for footwear and for bras or lingerie, and denim is another one.
Yes.
Like extensive size curves. The cool thing I think about also watching how businesses use Style Arcade and the size curve recommendations, a lot of our brands have actually been able to extend sizes on the edges, ranging to a 16 where they've only ever ranged to a 14, thinking about an extra small when they've only ever ranged extra small. So that was really amazing to see the kind of growth you can get just by shifting those little things. And obviously gaining more customers and a bigger customer base.
And what's the range plan component? Because when I look at your demo and everything, and I come from the buying background. I've got a degree in fashion, so for me, I love the visual, and the range plan, that's the spreadsheet that that goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, and then goes right and right and right, and you just go, I'll just go, oh God, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack, isn't it? Really,
Totally. I mean, those range plans that we used to build in Excel, we had 20 or 30 collaborators on one sheet, productions in there, buying, design, planning, and it's just a mess. So I think it's interesting, the range plan was really prompted by the brands coming to us and saying, there's a pandemic. We can't be sitting in our meeting room all collaborating on the range anymore. Our pin board's gone, our sticky notes are gone, our Excel spreadsheets can't be shared via email, they're too big. Help. So that was where we developed the range plan, which is bringing that all together in one place, and we're collaborating online in real time. So, and it's super visual, like you say, which I just love.
And then you can see your range. And one of the things I love about it is it's being able to do it without having to get your racks out and hang everything up. And then you've got the little bit with it's sort of like this, but it's in this color here, and it's got that fabric, and you've pinned it to. So can we just sort of imagine that that's what it is? And then you're standing back and you're going, have we got any gaps? I mean, the whole thing of the physical trying to, they're just the ability to just on your screen, stand back and go, we actually might have too much of such and such here, and we don't have enough of so-and-so, or, I think we're missing, and being able to pinpoint it really quickly is, for me, I just think as from the buying background, is like, oh my God, if I'd had that, when I was back in the heyday of my career in buying and whatever, I just would have loved that than the physical having to work it all
It's so
out.
much fun, Beverly. And I think, for people getting into the fashion space, you start out as, say, a buyer's admin, and all you spend your day doing is gathering these racks of samples for the range review. But all you want to do is sit in the range review and learn about how we range and how we think about things. And I agree with you. That visual aspect is so amazing. The other thing is that, previously, without the automation, we could never range by channel and store grade like we can now. So now you can just, in the range plan, select your store grade and say, what do A stores look like, when you walk in? And what does my US channel versus my AU channel look like? Because we need to range, differently for the whole globe.
Yeah. And that's really interesting as well, because one of the things we're just doing at the moment with I Want to Be a Fashion Buyer is we're just going through the assortment planning and range building, and giving the students a little taster of how you do that and how you do store grades, and then looking back at it. And one of the things that is for me was always thing is the things you send to all store, and then you look back and you go, so they've got black, white, grey marl, and not much choice there, and it's the classic, and how do you get, and sometimes when you're rushing, you don't really have thought that through, and then you go into store when the season launches and you go, oh, what did I do? And it's at that point it's too late, and the ability to slice and dice and go, well, actually that looks more balanced, and that's going to give the customer real choice, because at the end of the day, you need to give the customer, a really good, good choice. You don't want duplication. You don't want to be
cannibalizing your range.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. I think there's also that element of the, that aspirational product that it may not sell, but it needs to be in your small stores so that they can have a reason to come in. They're excited by the range and the newness. So all of those things you have to consider. And it's a lot when you're doing it manually, it's impossible to think of all the things, but
Absolutely.
now you can.
Yeah. Especially with the speed that things are moving at. This is the next hit.
That was quite evident in the pandemic as well, Beverly. If you think about all the brands, they were reworking their range on a daily basis.
Absolutely. One of the difficulties with the pandemic and the supply chain is actually the supply chain broke. Things didn't arrive, and then you're going to have to say, well, actually, this is what we planned, and this is actually what's turning up. And do we now have to replan how that's going to look, because this piece is not there, and this piece is not there, and this piece is not there? we still need to put a cohesive story together. How does that now look? And I think, you know, in my mind, I'm just going, oh my God, the possibilities are endless. I love the freedom
Yeah,
and the speed that would give you, really.
totally. It's funny how it's the freedom and the speed and the fun. You know,
Yeah.
it's fun exploring your range and what you do with it. I
Mm.
think it almost goes to our name, Style Arcade. It was meant to be, you know, gaming, fun. It's meant to be fun to build a fashion range.
Absolutely.
So I can totally relate to what you're saying. It's all about that. Like, there's just so much opportunity when you can see it all visually.
Yeah. And, you know, I always have this sort of view of the future of, you know, when we're all looking at holograms. And, you know, at the moment we've got a 2-dimensional screen, but in the future, when the hologram appears and you're going like that and everything's turning round and you go, okay, let's do the, that looks great. Oh, let's pull this one out. And that's my sort of view of where the future is going with technology. So where does your future, you know, your mind see the technology taking us?
Oh goodness. I think, Beverly, just to a place where we enjoy our jobs more. You know, I think Style Arcade plays a lot in the back of house. So we were really just trying to improve the buyers and planners' lives. What happens on the front of house with all of these magical holograms and things, it's super exciting to see where that could go. What I'm happy about as well is that is all fueled by a consciousness of sustainability and how we have less waste and more consideration, better quality, less quantity. I think it's going to be an exciting future for fashion. It's been a huge turning point for the industry.
You know, bringing the sustainability piece into it, if you are, you know, your size curve is wrong, and at the end of the season you've got all this fragmented stock, that has to go somewhere, and you know, it goes off to maybe a clearance store, and then maybe it doesn't sell again, and then eventually, you know, where does it end up? Does it end up in landfill? Because that is a huge waste. All the resources to make that product, to ship that product, to, you know, move that product, and you know, everything that took it. You're absolutely right that actually if you can increase your sell-throughs because your size curve is right, the sustainability is that you're not producing stuff that you're never going to sell.
Totally. Yeah. Do you know what brand impresses me the most on that aspect was that PE Nation in their early days, they had Style Arcade from when they started, and they were on it in terms of, you know, focusing on all of the things that they needed to know about merch planning. And that sustainability aspect has followed their business through, and they've got incredible growth. So now you can imagine at that scale that they are now, when they got their size curves right from the beginning, they've really made massive savings in terms of wastage over the years, which is, really commendable, I think.
And you really, it's joining all the dots, isn't it? And the technology is actually giving retailers the opportunity to join all those dots together, to be able to go, you know, where it's much more fun to put the range together, but actually we're more accurate in what we're buying, what we're ranging, what the size is, which makes us more profitable, and there's less wastage, which means we're more sustainable. It's really putting everything together.
Yeah, it's like almost winning. I remember we worked with Meshkey, and their buyer, Grace, she was just obsessed with size curves. So she managed to create incredible growth for the business from analyzing her size curves perfectly. She actually, I think when we did a post-season analysis on how accurate her curves were before and after, she had almost gotten to a 99% accuracy, which I've never, ever seen before. But she just loved it. She just loved it. So yeah, it's joining all the dots, and it is fun at the end of the day, because you feel like every improvement, every efficiency, every perfect buy is like a gold star almost.
Yeah. So one of the questions I like to ask towards the end is really, so if you were, with your experience and your knowledge of the industry, etc., if you were going to be starting out and wanting to get into retail and wanting to get into buying or merchandise planning today, what would be your advice for someone?
I think, Beverly, if I think back to my career, you know, I just learned as much as I could. there were very few resources available in those days. You learned from mentors and you learned in a business, whereas now you have online, you can learn all sorts of things. So I would say learning as much as you can, gathering all sorts of different mathematical models for how you do merch planning, because I believe there are some best practice ways, but every business is so different. You've got to adapt your thinking each time you go into a business, and you really need to merch plan for that business.
Yeah.
So I think learning would be a key one for me. And also questioning everything. You know, you walk into a business as a merch planner, it's not to say that all the systems and processes that have been set up before are correct, you know, for that business. So just question it. Don't feel afraid to question things. There's always a better way we can do something, always.
Yeah. Okay, well, Michaela, thank you very much for your time today. It's been fascinating talking with you, and I can't wait to see what Style Arcade does next.
Thanks, Beverly. Really appreciate it.